Cognitive Interfaces. Introduction. The awakening of the dormant algorithm. What the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Wisdom on the creative power of thought.
The seed. Few know why we are here. One day we are simply born, forcibly adapted to this environment, and we begin to breathe, to grow. There comes a moment in our lives when we become aware of these things, because, as happens with the vast majority, we have no memory of the beginning of all this in our frontal lobe. So we can only relive our past at an initial level because someone told us about it. And so we continue. We struggle, we learn, we communicate, we meet others at our same evolutionary scale. We acquire knowledge of the environment, of other living beings, human or not, and we normalize this behavior. We live in a nebula, rarely truly conscious of our present, making decisions without even thinking about why. Until at some point, I cannot pinpoint when, some of us begin to question things. We are not satisfied with the cultural context we happen to be born into. We become aware that something is missing, that the perceptual range in which we are immersed day after day, the routine, does not satisfy us. We are not content with the vibratory level that we carry, nor with the society that surrounds us. We begin to realize that most of the things we do out of habit or repetition, because we were told we had to do them, and we were even told how to do them. The software we inherited without a contract. We arrive in the world like blank operating systems, but not for long. From the first second of our existence outside the womb, and some would say even before, we begin receiving instructions, lines of code written into the deepest substrate of our mind, the territory that explorers of the psyche called the unconscious. This is not a passive repository of forgotten memories. It is an active processor operating without our awareness, running routines that determine how we feel, how we react, what we believe is possible, and what we discard before even considering it. Researchers of the early mind discovered that experiences from early childhood shape what we might call the basic architecture of our psychic apparatus. We did not choose these first instructions. They were given to us by parents, caregivers, circumstances, and yet they silently govern much of our adult life. Think about this. Every tension you hold in your body without realizing it, every automatic reaction to certain words or situations, every pattern you repeat even though you consciously want to change it, all of this is inherited code running in the background. Some pioneers of body-oriented psychology reached a revolutionary conclusion. Repression is not only mental, it is also muscular. When as children we learn to contain certain emotions to survive in our environment, we did not just store them in oblivion, we crystallized them in the very tissue of our body. What we might call an armor forms, an invisible shield that protects us but also limits us. The fictions that constitute us. But the programming does not end at the individual level. There exists a deeper, more ancient layer that we share as a species. Scholars of the collective psyche identified universal patterns that cross cultures and eras. Primordial images dwelling in an inherited psychic stratum. The hero, the mother, the shadow, the sage. These are not mere characters from ancient myths. They are fundamental cognitive interfaces that structure human experience, primordial lenses through which we process reality. And there is more. Historians of our species have pointed out something extraordinary. The ability to collectively create and believe in fictions is what distinguishes Homo sapiens from all other animals. Ants cooperate, yes, but rigidly and only with close relatives. We can coordinate the actions of millions of strangers through shared stories. Nations, religions, economic systems, money. They are all collective fictions, cognitive interfaces that mediate between individual minds and social action. That they are fictions does not mean they are lies. They are intersubjective realities. They exist because enough people believe in them and act accordingly. Money has no intrinsic value. It is paper with ink, but because millions of us share the fiction of its value, that paper can be exchanged for food, shelter, experiences. The fiction of money is an interface that enables economic coordination on a planetary scale. The map is not the territory. Here we arrive at the heart of what this book explores: cognitive interfaces. They are all those intermediate layers that mediate between our consciousness and what we call reality, whether the physical world of the senses or the intelligible world of concepts. We never perceive the world directly, Between us and the real, there always exists an invisible translator, a web of emotional filters, conceptual structures, inherited patterns, and beliefs that transform the infinite complexity of the universe into something our mind can process. Imagine that your mind is an explorer mapping an unknown territory. The territory exists without doubt, but the map you produce will never be the territory itself. The map simplifies, selects, interprets. It eliminates what it considers irrelevant and emphasizes what it judges important. And here lies the fundamental paradox. We spend our entire lives navigating by maps, convinced that we are walking on the real territory. Ancient spiritual traditions intuited this truth. Hermetic texts described the soul as the mediating dimension between spirit and matter. In Gnostic cosmologies, the human being contained a divine spark trapped in matter, and the path to enlightenment consisted of recognizing the layers of illusion separating that spark from its origin. What modern neuroscience calls perceptual processing, and what mystics called the veil of illusion, are descriptions of the same phenomenon from different angles. The power of autosuggestion. If our cognitive interfaces are programs that filter reality, can we reprogram them? Researchers of personal success spent decades studying the most successful individuals of their era and reached a surprising conclusion. The subconscious does not distinguish between real and imagined experiences. When you vividly visualize a scenario, the subconscious processes it as if it were actually happening. This characteristic, which might seem like a limitation, is actually a door to the deliberate transformation of our interfaces. Beliefs are not passive opinions, they are active instructions for processing reality. A belief like, "I am not worthy of success," is not simply a sad thought. It is a cognitive interface that will filter opportunities, emphasize failures, and interpret neutral events as confirmations of unworthiness. The belief creates its own evidence because it structures perception. This explains why sustained change requires more than conscious willpower. We can desire something with all our conscious mind, while our subconscious operates with different programming. Consciousness wants to advance. The subconscious interface filters everything in a way that confirms the limitation. Effective transformation requires working at the level where interfaces are encoded, the language of images, emotions, and repetition. Positive mental attitude is not naivety or denial of difficulties. It is the deliberate calibration of the interface through which we process experience. It is consciously choosing which side of the invisible talisman we carry, the one that can attract good or repel it, depending on how we orient it. The Tree of 10 Dimensions. Esoteric traditions develop sophisticated maps of the interfaces between the human and the divine. The most elaborate of these maps represents the structure of the cosmos and the human being as a diagram of 10 interconnected spheres. Each sphere is a level of consciousness, a cognitive interface that processes reality in a particular way. At the base is the kingdom, the sphere of ordinary material experience, the densest interface, where consciousness is completely identified with the physical body and the world of the senses. At the summit is the crown, the most subtle interface, where individual consciousness dissolves into primordial unity. Between both extremes unfold 8 additional spheres, each representing a specific mode of experiencing existence. What is fascinating about this map is that it does not present a simple hierarchy. Each sphere has its function. Each interface is necessary. The problem is not having cognitive interfaces, but being trapped in a single one, believing it is the only reality. Inner work consists of developing fluidity, the capacity to consciously move between different levels of perception according to what each situation requires. The alchemy of perception. Alchemy was not a primitive attempt to turn lead into gold. The original texts make clear that the transmutation of metals was a metaphor for the true work, the transformation of the alchemist himself. Lead represented the ordinary state of consciousness, dense, opaque, reactive. Gold symbolized the illuminated state, brilliant, stable, incorruptible. From the perspective of cognitive interfaces, alchemy is the art of transforming the filters through which we perceive. The lead of our fears, resentments, and inherited limitations can be transmuted into the gold of clarity, compassion, and inner freedom. We do not change external reality. We refine the instrument that processes it. And since the instrument and the experience are inseparable, refining perception is refining life itself. Awakening to the interfaces. The first step toward cognitive freedom is recognizing that we have interfaces. This seems obvious when reading it, but in daily practice we live completely identified with our filters, confusing them with how things are. When someone contradicts us, we do not think their interface processes this differently. We think they are wrong. Identification with our interfaces is so complete that we have made them invisible. Contemplative traditions developed practices to disidentify from cognitive interfaces. Meditation cultivates a witness that observes thoughts and perceptions without merging with them. This witness is not just another thought, it is consciousness itself before any filter. From this position, we can see our interfaces in operation. Notice how a thought generates an emotion, how a belief colors a perception, how an inherited pattern organizes an experience. Seeing the interfaces does not destroy or invalidate them. We still need them to function in the world, but the relationship changes fundamentally. We shift from being used by our interfaces to consciously using them. It is the difference between being trapped in a labyrinth and knowing its map. The labyrinth is still there, but it no longer holds us prisoner. Toward cognitive algorithms. This book is an invitation to reverse engineer our own consciousness. Just as a programmer can examine the code of software to understand how it works and improve it, we can examine the algorithms that govern our perception, our emotions, our decisions. It is not about eliminating the algorithms. Without them, we could not function. It is about making them conscious, understanding their logic, identifying which ones serve our expansion and which keep us in limiting cycles. It is about shifting from being programs that run automatically to being programmers who can modify their own code. The 4 pillars we will explore, self-knowledge, self-regulation, self-control, and self-discipline, are the tools for this work. Self-knowledge is the diagnosis. What algorithms are operating in me? Self-regulation is calibration. How do I adjust these processes without suppressing them? Self-control is mastery of execution. How do I navigate difficult situations without losing my center? And self-discipline is consistency. How do I maintain these changes over time until they become my new nature? As above, so below. The Hermetic principle of correspondence reminds us that resonances exist between all levels of reality. What occurs on the mental plane has reflections on the emotional plane and eventually on the physical plane. Interfaces are not impermeable barriers. They are membranes through which information flows in both directions. Perhaps the most mysterious thing of all is that the universe has developed creatures with cognitive interfaces sophisticated enough to turn upon themselves and ask what they are. That consciousness can contemplate its own filters is already a miracle. That it can deliberately transform them is the foundation of all inner evolution. That it can recognize what remains immutable behind all of them is the final destination of the journey. Between what we are and what we perceive ourselves to be, between the world and our experience of the world, the cognitive interfaces dance. Learning their dance is the work of a lifetime. Teaching them to dance to the rhythm of our deepest intention is the art of transformation. Welcome to this journey of reverse engineering the soul.